Today we're going to show you a short game that illustrates the fundamental theory of unsound chess. I remember reading at one point that the Budapest Gambit was introduced in a famous tournament, and I believe that they'd been playing it for a few weeks. It was like somewhere in Berlin or Vienna or someplace, and a fine player like Rubinstein or somebody went in and continuously lost to it, not knowing what to do because they hadn't seen it, and it was the first time that it had been tried by people on other people at high levels. And while it's fundamentally a decent gambit and not completely unsound, it's nowhere near as unsound as the England gambit. It's worth knowing. And the problem with the Budapest gambit is that it allows white to enter channels that he studied, and he doesn't even have to know the Budapest Gambit to avoid it. Simply by playing a different order of moves with knight to f3 earlier and things like that, he can avoid the Budapest Gambit altogether. But it fails in the regard that you play lines that limit responses. He can limit your responses simply by playing a different order of moves up front. So I can't really recommend playing this, and I don't play it much. And the reason why I'm showing you this game is because it was an interesting game, and once again against a 2100 plus. So the essence of the Budapest Gambit is, as you see, he's going to decline this. Stockfish recommends simply taking it, then the knight hops over to g4, and various things happen. So in essence, what we have here is what I play in the England Gambit frequently, this kind of formation against a declined acceptance. Although I do tend to like to get my pawn on f5 before moving my knight to f6. So now you're going to see him fianchetto and do a variety of things here. I should turn on the engine. Black has a slight advantage, as you see. I'm just taking a lot of interesting courses. So a5 is necessary to prevent the queenside expansion at this point. And this is where I diverge. As you can see, the computer likes simply knight on b to d7. And I'm going after the fianchettoed king position. And it says that all he has to do is retreat his knight and reposition, and he's fine. So I do move knight to a6 here, which is a computer recommendation and a strange place to have a knight. But if you do move the bishop, it's got a nice post that is fairly well protected. And now he decides to go after my bishop and develop his pawn. Now, the e4 pawn here belongs on e3, as Stockfish 8 shows. The reason it belongs on e3 is to prevent bishop to d4, which I not believe I ever actually played in this game, but it says I can get a healthy advantage by playing that now, but that's not in the cards for me. g5 runs into queen to f3, so it is possible for him to play queen to f3 here, and the right response probably would simply be to move my king up to protect the knight, and then he can exchange off the bishops and post a knight on f5 with check, and then I end up with a king on g6 and a whole variety of complications that probably give white a slight edge. But he doesn't do that. He simply retreats and allows me to continue with a kind of dubious attack structure. Now, this attack structure is fairly easy to defeat, but you have to know how. And white doesn't know how here. Now I've backed up. Now, the idea of attacking with this kind of battery in mind is that I'm going to move my knight to g4, and then somehow I'm going to threaten that knight on f3. So once I get that in, and it would be wonderful if he just simply recaptured at some point, he's going to have a lot of trouble defending his king position, especially if I manage to get an f5. So the gist of my position here is I'm going to do my best to attack that f3 knight in this position. And it says this is an even game, basically. He retreats to d8, which no longer makes it an even game. So if you look at it, Stockfish 8 said, move it to c2. And of course, the current engine we have on also says move it queen to c2. He moves queen to d8. And now the question becomes, what's the big deal? Okay. Now if you see, it says now he should move to queen c2 as well. So what was it so magically that queen to c2 would have done? Well, so I'll move a4, b4, knight to b3. Okay. It's interesting, isn't it? The fact is that he'd be recapturing with the rook at this point and have a space for his king to go to f1. Now, I don't play the classical line, which is like simply take his bishop. However, what you'll see instead of being up 9, this would be called a blunder by a computer program. I'm still going to be up 5 or something, so once again, I don't do the classical bishop takes bishop. It says he can defend, but he's still down 5 or 6, so he's busy being down 9 in some cases instead. And almost every line wins in this structure of attack, and he's doing his best. He's a strong player. So now, as you see, we're going to get discovery on the knight. It doesn't like the order of moves I choose, I think, although it still gives me a +10. And interestingly, a minute ago it liked the pawn push. So this game's actually pretty much over. It takes me a minute or two to find the mate. So this was the Budapest Gambit and declined, and I've showed it to you because of the nature of the attacking structure with the battery of the bishop and the queen and the moving the queen out in front of the fianchetto position and backing it up and replacing it with the knight. Now, there are a variety of ways to defend against that, and this opponent didn't find it. So that is the Budapest Gambit, and probably the only video I'm ever going to post on it.